Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Nicole Kulmatevsky. And just a little bit about me really quick. I am a relatively new speech therapist, but I have been working in early intervention and with children with disabilities for the past 3 years now. And through my work in early intervention, I have become a team member with a lot of families, with a lot of parents, and have been really blessed to be part of their journey with navigating their child's disability or their child's speech disorder. And so I thought, why not connect that and my passion for stuttering and just have a little session and talk about grief with stuttering and something that parents might feel and validating it and making it okay to talk about grief and grieving things that are really hard and really tough on us, on your kids, on our families, and so forth. So I did have some slides for you guys today, so I'm going to share. All right. So I actually wanted to ask the audience here what they think when they think about the word grief or the word grieving. So you can go ahead and unmute. You can raise your hand. I think I can see who raises their hand. But I would love to hear from some of the people that are in this room what they think grief is or what they think about when they hear the word grief. Gloria.
Hi, I would say that it can stem from loss or 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 change. That's what I would say.
Yeah, so you mentioned the word loss. And oftentimes when we talk about grief, we think about, somebody has died, right? And we're grieving that person. And oftentimes there's a connotation that we have loved this person so much and we have lost them and we're trying to navigate our lives without them. Um, However, when we also think about loss in another way, a loss of dreams, or maybe a loss of who you think you were going to be as a parent, or who you think your child was going to be. Um, and oftentimes when I present the topic of grief to parents, um, they feel the need to disclaim and say, but I love my child and I accept my child for who they are. But I was never questioning their love for their child. As a matter of fact, I was actually validating it. You're bursting at the seams with love for your child. And I'm acknowledging that not only has there been an obstruction in your path, but you've been placed on an entirely different path altogether. And it's because you love and you care so much that you're going through all these feelings and these emotions. So I really wanted to bring us on the same page in terms of grief, that it comes from love and that it doesn't define how much you love your child because it comes from that. It coexists with love. So, grief can be defined as holistic because it is a dynamic and complex, as well as a psychosocial process that is produced by change. It involves a lot of dimensions like physical, behavioral, emotional, spiritual, and cognitive. And these dimensions we're going to kind of break down a little bit and talk about each of them individually. And there are actually a lot of similarities between the stages that parents go through in accepting a child's disability and the attitudes toward death and dying. So, talking about, the 5 stages of grief. And this can be experienced during any stage of life. Like, even even when your child goes to school for the first time, you're grieving the child that you've had before they went off to school, right? Like you're shifting realities, you're going on a different path, and that's totally fine and it's totally okay. But when your child goes to school for the first time, that grieving process isn't as long as, let's say, your child is diagnosed with a disability or your child stutters. And that is a lifelong thing that you're going to have to constantly deal with and constantly go back to grieving and re-grieving, so to speak. So there's two types of grief. The first one is stage grief, and it is often a grief that is experienced with death. And this is not the kind of grief that we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about episodic grief. And this results from an initial diagnosis of a communication disorder or a disability, or in this case, when you first hear your child stuttering and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on, right? And this can help explain how not just parents, but all family members can cope with the loss of this quote unquote perfect child who is often seen as an extension of themselves. And, all these goals and dreams that you've had for your kid that are now, is this going to happen? Could this ever happen for my child? So going back to those dimensions that we were talking about, um, we're going to talk, like I was saying, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into them. So these are common symptoms that are usually accompany grief, loss, or stress. So we have physical symptoms that could be you're not sleeping, you're not eating, your immune system's breaking down. A lot of stress and grief does manifest in the body physically. So if you're experiencing things like this, totally normal. Um, the mental symptoms, so difficulty concentrating, you had a break in your routine, potentially you're doing something temporary in order to find a long-term routine that works for your family, difficulty making decisions, things like that. Um, the emotional symptoms, so just a general sense of feeling overwhelmed and overcome with emotions, or that you can't really control your emotions. Maybe you fear that you're going to have an outburst or tend to have a short fuse, and that you can't really control those emotions. And then spiritual. So perhaps you're not a very spiritual person and you might become a spiritual person in this journey and you're asking a higher power, like why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to my family? Or you might go the other way and you might lose a little bit of faith. So in order to kind of find the meaning and find the reason behind the diagnosis or the disability. So we have two kinds of losses. We have a primary loss, which is usually referred to again with grieving of a person that has passed away. So that person that died would be the primary loss, which we are again not discussing in this presentation, but I thought I can still include it because it's good to know. And then secondary losses. So loss of self-confidence, loss of structure, loss of dreams for the future. Again, loss of your happiness, loss of your ability to make decisions. And all of this is really important to think about because, again, it ties into that really dynamic process of grief and how it affects your mental, your emotional, your physical well-being. And this is just a little picture for those who learn more visually. So again, this primary loss that we won't be talking about, but these secondary losses, loss of future plans, loss of friendships, shifted family dynamics. So, perhaps your immediate family, you're working on making your child feel seen and feel heard and comfortable at home. But then you go to grandma and grandpa's house and, maybe they're telling your kid to spit it out, or they're asking, if they forgot their name, or they're pushing you to put your child in more speech therapy. A loss of identity. So also grieving the parent that you thought you were going to be when your child is experiencing things like a disability or stuttering. So these are common feelings associated with the stages of grief. Um, and we're going to go over them. So, a feeling of shock right here. Um, it's really important to understand that some of these feelings, like shock, anxiety, anger, depression, we do have a more negative connotation towards those feelings. But I really like how this table brings value to all of those feelings, because there is value in a feeling of numbness, or a feeling of questioning everything, or feeling sad and disconnected. There's always a value, um, to why you're experiencing these emotions, and how you're processing this grief. So with shock, usually it's associated with numbness, and it's sort of like nature's anesthesia, and it allows you to sort of be able to turn on that autopilot when there's a big shift in your reality, when there's a lot of big news that's been dropped on you. Um, and it prevents you from being overwhelmed, and provides a little bit of a safety cushion in a way. And then we have denial. So refusing to accept your reality, saying, this can't be happening. This can't be happening to me. This can't be happening to my child. Um, and it temporarily relieves those painful feelings and gives you time to regroup until the reality of your new world has set in a little bit. And, talking about being shifted from one path to another, and being able to accept that you are now on another path with your family, with your child, with yourself. And then we have feelings of anxiety. So, feeling alone, feeling responsible for everything, being insecure, um, being concerned and afraid of the unknown. And this has great value because it forces you to redirect your energy to more positive action. So, if you're scared that something is going to happen, you're really going to try your best to make sure that it doesn't happen. Um, and then we have anger, of course. So all of that resentment, all of that anger that, things aren't going to happen the way that you were planning, on them happening, whether that's with yourself, with your dreams and goals, or with your child's dreams and goals. And it allows that release of emotions, the floodgates open, and you're able to be angry about it, and you're beginning to focus on the present, which is really important when it comes to moving towards accepting the reality of the situation. Um, and then we have guilt. So, the if only, and potentially placing the blame on yourself, and saying, oh, maybe if I hadn't done this, then maybe my child wouldn't start stuttering. Or, maybe if I did this, we could have helped it, we could have fixed it, we could have made it go away in the beginning. So dwelling on something that cannot be changed or controlled. And this does not have any value, um, in the process, but it's definitely a very natural thing that we all experience, whether we're dealing with stuttering or not. And then we have depression. So great sadness, feeling really disconnected, feeling isolated. A lot of the anger is turned on yourself. However, it does indicate some degree of acceptance. So when you are sad about something, it's because it's become real to you. Um, and I think that is really important. And again, moving towards acceptance, moving towards realizing that you're on a different path, you're on a new path, and you have to figure out how to keep going, regardless of all the plans you've had on the previous path that you were on. And then we have the feeling of acceptance. So being content, acknowledging, your reality, acknowledging the disability, acknowledging the communication difference. It empowers, um, and facilitates the rebuilding of your life. and it recognizes some positive aspects in terms of talking about a disability or the reality of your situation, but not necessarily. Um, I feel like a lot of times we are talking about a lot of the positives and accepting the positives of the situation. And sometimes acceptance is neutral. Sometimes it's just about accepting what it is for right now. And these feelings come and go. Um, Even after you feel acceptance and you feel like you might be content in a situation or content in a certain period of your life, those feelings can come back again. So you can be re-grieving the same thing over and over. So you can feel anxiety and guilt and acceptance at the same time. Or you might be feeling all of those feelings at the same time, which again talks back to how dynamic this process is and how it affects your mental and emotional states. And of course, these stages will be experienced out of order, and that is very normal, and that is totally okay. So it's not some ladder where you unlock the next level of the stages of grief. It's all felt at the same time. And again, it's not just an obstacle, it's not just a bump in a road. You're being placed on a completely different road and your GPS isn't working. Like there's nothing that can help you other than these feelings and some of those negative feelings. Again, like the value of those negative feelings to be able to numb you and to give you time to accept that reality and to give you time to plan ahead in your new path. So, an estimated 70% of family members who experience a sense of loss in a response to a diagnosis are going to have moderate to severe emotional reactions. Um, and this type of grief is prolonged, and there's really no predictable or complete resolution because you might have gone through the stages of grief with your 5-year-old who stutters, but then they start school and those stages of grief can start all over again because you're placed on yet again another completely different path. Um, and having a child with a communication difference or a disability is not expected. It often necessitates a change in plans, of family plans, and other members of the family adjusting their views for the future of that child. And again, with school starting, you're going to have to be looking for accommodations. Maybe you're going to have to look for some financial resources, seeking related services. So, speech therapy, am I finding the right speech therapist? What is the right speech therapist for my child? Who is the right speech therapist for my child? Um, and again, because this is such a dynamic process, it's going to keep happening cyclically almost. And these dynamics are going to be potentially straining even marital relationships and family relationships because like that example I used before where maybe your immediate family is all on the same page, but once you go out to a family event, the other people in your family that are a little bit removed from your household might have some different opinions. And while you're going through the grieving process, you're also dealing with other people's input about what they think is best for your child. So yes, it's really difficult and it sucks for sure. So permission to grieve. Um, Societal expectations for grief, especially grief like this, are super vague and very unclear in terms of how long you're allowed to grieve. So if you're spending too much time in the grieving process, it might be interpreted as a weakness. Whereas if you're cool, calm, and collected, it might be interpreted as, a strength of character. But perhaps you're putting up a front. Perhaps you are presenting yourself as cool and chill with everything, but on the inside, you're still going through all these feelings. So it is 100% okay to give yourself permission to grieve and to give yourself permission to grieve forever, for as long as it takes, because that means that you are continuously loving and caring for your child and making sure that you are doing whatever it takes and whatever path you have been placed on to keep going and to keep moving forward. And if you have grieved or if you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm such a terrible parent, like I'm feeling so sad because my child is stuttering and I'm seeing all these things on Facebook and Instagram to accept stuttering and stuttering pride, but here I am feeling angry about it. Here I am feeling sad about it. I feel like I'm depressed and it's okay. You need to forgive yourself for that because grieving is normal. This is a very human, very normal process, and it is yours and only yours. So it doesn't matter what anybody else says because they are not you and they are not in your shoes and they are not in your family. They're not in your immediate circle or your outer circle. So just give yourself permission to grieve. And I wanted to read this to you guys. So, this is a little story by Emily Pearl Kingsley. It's called Welcome to Holland. And this is her trying to describe the experience of raising a child with a disability to those people who might not know what that's like. And I think a lot of parents here might be able to relate to this. So, I did want to read this out to you guys. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, the Michelangelo David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The flight attendant comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." "Holland?" you say. "What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy." But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks, and you must learn a whole new language, and you will meet a whole new group of people you would have never met. It's just a different place. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy, but after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills and Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy, and they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, "Yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned." And the pain of that will never, ever, ever, ever go away because the loss of that dream is very, very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland. And I kind of wanted to stop here and sort of let this marinate with you guys a little bit and see if anybody has any thoughts, any questions so far. Just give us a little break because this is all very heavy and deep. Do any parents here want to comment on this story?
I'll speak. Sorry, my camera is not working
That's okay.
on my Zoom. But so ironically, I worked in a nonprofit for a very long period of time, and whenever we brought new folks together who were learning about the adults with developmental disabilities division, we always shared this story, and I haven't heard it in 10 years. And as soon as you started reading it, I was like, oh my God, I never would have even connected it with our story, I guess, because, I in my brain, we shared it specifically for that group of folks whose challenges were very different than what we deal with my daughter and her stutter. But it took me a few moments to remove that from my brain and just think about it in terms of my expectations for her and what we've been through. And so it is so powerful. It really just is. I just thank you for sharing that again. I appreciated the opportunity to hear it in a different light with a different lens.
Of course, and thank you for being here. I think this was meant to reach you again in some kind of capacity. So I'm glad you were able to hear it again in a different light. Does anybody else have anything they would like to say about this? All right, we're gonna move on then. So I would love to open the floor now. Um, if anybody has any questions, if anybody would like to share their story, um, I would really love to hear reflections, possibly from parents here about their personal journeys with grief, um, and stuttering. Or if you're a person who stutters too, feel free to share if this has brought up any thoughts.
Can you hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hi, no, I just wanted to share that I have a slightly different kind of grief in that um our son Ethan, he's now a junior in college, and his stutter has come and gone over the years. Um, and then we've realized that it was always it was coming at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year. So we finally figured out that it was whenever there was change going on, the being stressful time. And then all of a sudden one year we're like, wait a minute, it's November, the stutter hasn't gone yet. That's weird. So we just kind of expected it to go away, and then all of a sudden a year goes by and like, okay, it's not going away. So we got used to that, we accepted that. And then as of, I don't know how long, Mike, has this stutter been different? Like,
April.
like, yeah. So about since then, the stutter went from the this to it's a like this. And I'm giving you the edited version, and it's more intense, and it's like I grieve his old stutter. I just want him to stutter like he used to. And I know it can frustrate him. And, of course, the typical stuff we worry about him at college, not going and doing things because he doesn't want to deal and all that stuff. So it's, still college. We're still dealing with it.
Yeah, or even just tonight, I was saying we have to remember that there's so many things to celebrate that he's gone through,
Right.
like the victories that we can't, you grieve that he's not doing certain things, but we're not, me probably more so, I'm not taking the time to think about all the great stuff that he has overcome and where he is, and he's on his own path, on his own timeline. So sometimes you have to remember that to have, along with your grief, you have to celebrate, you know, the things they are accomplishing. And, right now at almost 21, I think his stutter's worse than it's ever been. And
Mm.
we just gotta get through it. But it's good to hear you know, just to be reminded that it's okay to feel this way, and just to keep sharing and letting it out loud and being part of things like this that, you know, just make you feel like it, you know, you're not alone. It's going to be all right.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. That was what a beautiful example of, grief stemming from love. You guys, and I could feel it through the screen, you guys love him so much and you're so focused on his future and you want the best for him and you want to protect him from all the dangers, and all of the things that come with being a person who stutters going into college and then after that, that you're sort of reminding yourself you have to stay in the present. Um, Thank you so much for sharing that. You guys are wonderful parents.
Nicole, it's Jamie. I don't know how to do that hand thing. I'm
Hi, it's
sitting here
okay.
trying to figure it
Hi, Jamie.
out. I have thought about this topic for a very, very long time. And one thing I know about grief, with every ending, there's an opportunity for a new beginning. I think Mike and Linda touched on it a little bit because my daughter just turned 15. And I don't, I'm not going to say I don't grieve. I don't call it grief.
Okay.
Because if I call it grief, then I have to experience the sadness in it. I accept the way she speaks, but I refuse to accept the sadness, because if I become sad, then I can't move her closer to her goals. So the sadness in me will overcome the sadness in her, because the connection between parent and child is so strong. So once you encompass that grief, that depression, that sense of loss, and I call it pseudo fake acceptance instead of real acceptance. I'm sorry, I have to say it like I say it, y'all know. But I have to stay focused on, okay, that happened, so what's plan B? What's plan C?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the natural, grief brings people together. I mean, the NSA conference is a class. I mean, it's a reunion of people who share the same loss, to share the same. So that's the beautiful thing about it. It also gives us the opportunity to be creative, because I think, for me, this just for me, and I just might be an odd parent, but whatever the hand that I was dealt, that was intended for me, for my child, to lead others and pave the way for that path. That's just how I believe it. I believe that the way she speaks and how she speaks was given to her, and I just get to be, the co-pilot in them to help her facilitate and lead others into this beautiful journey of how they express themselves. So not to belabor the point, I love it. There are stages of grief. As parents, yes, it's shock. Yes, we have to get to the point of acceptance. I think Mandy would agree that there's some great information out there on acceptance. And I wish more parents would get to acceptance straight out the box.
That's
You
hard
know,
though.
it is, but I just say that maybe I just didn't think it was a bad thing. I just thought it was, hey, that's the way she talked. That's how we gonna roll with it. Baby, what you need. That was my thought from day one, from 3. So I think sometimes society dictates what we're supposed to think about our children, when indeed we need to think in the way that they were gifted, in the way that they were given to us. And grief wouldn't be so hard because we know that this is part of their journey, as part of our journey as parents. I mean, Mike and Linda have blessed and encouraged and helped so many people. Just think of how many people they have met. How many people, I have gotten to in my 30 years of social work. I never in my wildest dreams thought I would meet such wonderful people, in this community. It's a beautiful community. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so glad she's Stutter. I get to be hang out with these cool people. I know it sounds crazy, but I think we never know why things happen. So the guilt and blame, we cannot, but I do believe it happened for a reason. People, to Nicole tonight, you giving this talk is for a reason, to help us help others get to enjoying the journey, however difficult, however teary-eyed. That's life, baby. I've lost 9 family members, 10th today. My brother-in-law passed away this morning. This is the 10th family member since March of 2023. I choose joy. I choose to see the memories and the good things. It's hard, but just like with our kids, we got to keep showing them there's a light. They are a light. They are a blessing, that their voice matters and what they have to say matters. And it can change. It can change a life. It can change a world. It can change a community. So I'm going to be quiet. I didn't bring that on, but thank you. I appreciate it. This is just a wonderful topic to help so many people. But there is joy. There is joy in acceptance.
Yes, thank you, Jamie. I'm so sorry for your loss, first of all. And second of all, you said that you choose joy, right? And that you say you don't really want to call it grief because you're not allowing yourself to experience that sadness, but it doesn't mean that it's not there. Like I think you can still call it grief, and I think you can still, even if it's a split second of, oh man, this really sucks, right? But we're gonna get right back to it. That's still some sadness. That's still some, maybe it's not full-blown depression, but it's okay to feel that, and it's okay to choose not to feel that. So your journey with grief is different because you choose which feelings you want to feel and which feelings are best for you to feel to best serve your child and to best continue to move forward. But I think you can still call it grief.
I wanted to say something based on what Jamie just said. I remember one time my sister said something to the effect, I'm jealous that you stutter. And she's like, you get to travel all over the place. You talk to so many people, you're out in the community. She says, I don't get to do that. And I'm like, I had never thought of that, like I had never in my wildest dreams thought of that. And she wasn't being snarky or sarcastic or anything. She was being genuine. And And when I think about that, you know, she's right. You know, like I've been given opportunities that I never would have because I've learned to be open and accepting of my stutter, which it took a while. Um, but you know, I've had a journey with my stuttering that I've been, you know, happy with. And something that you said, Nicole, earlier that I can really relate with. My father, I always assumed that he was ashamed of having a kid that stuttered because I destroyed his perfect image. Um, and I felt that early in his reactions towards me when I started stuttering at 5. I don't remember the moments of stuttering. I remember how he reacted to how I stuttered, yelling at me, telling me to spit it out. His face would get deep red, and he had like a vein in his on his temple that would throb so bad that I thought he would like bust, you know? So I always felt his shame that I was not a perfect child. And because of that, he refused to let me attend speech therapy. And that was part of the reason why I was so covert, you know. But so to have that early experience and then have a sibling tell me many years later how lucky I was that I stuttered was just such a you know, a 180 moment that I could never have imagined. So I just wanted to add on to what Jamie shared.
Ezra.
Yeah, I was thinking too. So I'm Ezra. If you don't know who I am, I run the account Stutterology. I'm not a parent, but I do talk with parents a good amount, and I try to make uh like I try, and I've listened a lot to like my mom's experience. And when I was listening to, and I already sent this to Linda, but when I was listening to your story, and when you said, you know, I grieve the way he used to stutter, it really resonated. Like, I don't know, like that more than almost anything else in a while really resonated with something in me, because I know that my mom probably felt a very similar thing, right? Like what kind of what you were sharing and what Jamie was sharing. And there was a lot of just like going with the flow for my mom. She didn't really, I don't think my mom had like projected a lot at that point onto what she thought like my future would be necessarily, what being a parent meant yet. I think that would come later on, but that was an area that she just rolled with it. But I think as I continually faced issues with teachers, with mostly teachers, um, and my self-esteem started to really suffer, and I started to hide away more and become more withdrawn. I think she probably felt a lot of that, like a lot of what you know like what Linda has shared. I'm projecting her emotions, but I've talked with her about this a lot, of like those years were really hard. Well, not even like, just it wasn't that like having a stutter changed what she thought my life would be, but it was watching the way other people's reactions and like the ignorance in our society, those moments watching it impact me was really heavy, and watching it dull my voice and quiet my voice, I think that was a huge grief that she did carry. And while eventually, you know, I got to a much better place, as Pam was sharing too, you know, you guys probably see these people at NSA, and if your kid's still in those harder places, I just can't imagine how long that time would feel as well. So I think that it's also very important and valid to acknowledge that it looks different, right? It might not be when they started to stutter it might be when it started to negatively impact them, which can be two entirely different points of time. But thank you guys for sharing all of this too.
I wanted to thank you, Ezra, for sharing. Wanted to ask the parents on here if they would like to share, possibly their first experience with maybe some feelings of grief. Maybe feelings of grief with their child or feelings of grief with what they thought parenthood was going to be like. Um, having if you have like other children who don't stutter and the child who does stutter, maybe the difference with that. This is super vulnerable and you guys do not have to, but definitely would love to hear some of those experiences, some of those early stages of grief now that we have some of those words and some of those feelings that we can use to talk about, oh, I have experienced this before. If anybody would like to share. Oh, Heidi?
Yes.
Yes, hi.
You hear me okay?
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I guess I just thinking through all this and all the emotions, and I've never really, I guess I'm similar to Jamie from in the standpoint of I've never really thought of it as grief before, but I've definitely felt the guilt, the anxiety, um, and my son and I have gone to two national conferences, and I didn't really realize, and I started going to local chapter meetings too. And I didn't realize until starting to do any of that that I think I needed the support even more than I think he did. So for me, like kind of immersing myself in the community and talking to others, and um, it's really kind of put me, I think, on a path to acceptance much more so than I didn't really associate it with that I wasn't accepting it, but I think I'm much farther down that road now because of all the support that I've had around me. Um, and my son is just a super chill. He's 16 and he's a super chill kid. And, you know, he always, I mean, I still worry that he's not as okay as he seems to be. Um, but, you know, he also has connected with kids in the local community, and he goes to a camp with other kids his same age who stutter. And um, so, yeah, I guess I still, of course, worry about him and the rest of high school and college and how all that's going to go for him. But um, I think for the first time in a while, I feel like I'm in a better place with just the whole acceptance thing. And not to say that, yeah, I mean, I think what you said about like it's going to come and go, like depending on, I mean, I know with his stutter, it day by day it can be different. It can be better, worse, or not. I know worse is a bad word, but it changes. So I think it'll be a journey, but I feel like we're at a place in the journey where things are pretty good for right now. So yeah, yes, that's all I wanted to say.
Awesome. Do you think that, you also being on this path towards acceptance is sort of paving that way for him? Then you say you worry that he might not be as okay as maybe he's showing. But, you as that example, you moving towards the acceptance and you being okay with it, do you think that might have a positive effect on him, maybe even in a way that you might not even realize?
I hope so. I mean, we've always been, at least especially in like the last 3 years, very like I talk to him pretty regularly about how things are going and how's school going, and kind of in the context of his speech and his communicate, not his communication, but how others are, if others are being nice to him, that type of thing. But I think, I guess I'm hopeful that, like me, I feel like in at home I'm more calm about not like asking so many digging questions about, well, how are things, like to the point where he would before be like, okay, enough already, mom. So I mean, I'm hopeful that that's paving the way for acceptance for him, and having a more calm, I don't know, feeling about it all, because I guess that's the way I feel.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. And I forget who said it, but co-regulation, your kids are so attuned to your emotions as well. And you having that really calm vibe about yourself and being a grounding force for him is going to be really powerful as he's continuing to navigate high school, and knowing that you are there as an anchor almost, that you are his stability in that kind of sense, where everything else is going around, you are still there and you are still calm and you're still okay with it no matter what, is really powerful. So I think you're doing a wonderful job with sort of holding that door open for him and letting him walk through it when he's ready. When he wants to talk about deeper things with you, he can. And, if he doesn't want to, then you're not going to pry. And so I think you're doing great.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have any other thoughts about possibly being that example for our kids? Maybe somebody has felt a shift in themselves and has seen that effect in their children, or maybe from the people who stutter that are here. Have you, sort of been influenced by your parents growing up? Mandy.
Hi, I just want to say how wonderful this chat is, and this gathering, this space. I just want to thank you, Nicole, Pam, for hosting this. I think it's so much needed. A public space to be able to talk about these things, and it's really beautiful to see all the parents. I applaud all of you for being here. I think for me, my story is kind of similar to Pam. And so my home, so my base, right, that's safe, which I wish it would have been a safer space to stutter and exist and let it exist, but it was not. And I think now, though, as I've gone along on my journey of acceptance and being connected with community, and over the past 2 years of that, I've had some conversations with my parents, and I've let them know, like, you didn't know better. I've said, I forgive you, but I do let you know it's really, these spaces weren't afforded to you, or you didn't know, you didn't have speech pathologists that are out there now, or you didn't have the NSA back then, and you didn't have friends or any of those types of communities. What you had was a doctor tell you that you needed to take your daughter to speech therapy, and you had a speech therapist that told you that she couldn't stutter and she needed to do all these things to help her be fluent. And then with my dad, coming from his own generation, he was never afforded to stutter either. So there's all these different factors that went into my experience, outside of myself. So I definitely have experienced that grief and mourning. What could have been if only there was friends, NSA, if there was, other parents that my parents could have talked to, if there was safe spaces, to stutter. So I definitely, have experienced those kind of feelings, have sat with them. Um, but I'm grateful for that too, because I think they were so long, I just didn't have access to that. And the kind of like the fight or flight that I had lived in with stuttering and running from it, my whole life, and knowing it wasn't okay. So what I'm really happy is that I was able to find that space to heal that, and be with, meet with other parents, um, that are going through this with their child, and being a voice of, hey, you know, um, I don't know how to say it, a voice of sharing my story and struggles, and offering another path, another way. And you know, maybe that's in because my parents were afforded that I'm here for that reason. I didn't, you know, I didn't come to the table, so to speak, until now to do that in this moment that we all are in. So yeah, it's been interesting. Definitely a lot of sad feelings and gosh, what if, right? But yeah, I'm here now, and it yeah, I think it fueled that sense of sharing my story. And Pam, special thanks to you for being that first person. Hey, Mandy, you want to share your story? So taking those first steps, and I think it was that, you know, initial grief of realizing, gosh, that sucked. That was awful. I'm angry. I'm sad, you know. So yeah, but here I am. So yeah,
Thank you.
thank you,
Thank you for
Nicole.
being here.
Yeah.
I have a question. Since this is very vulnerable for everybody, has any parent felt themselves to blame for their child stuttering? I know back in the day when there weren't as many resources as there are now, I know a lot of parents did feel like it was their fault. Has anybody experienced that?
I mean, I will say that I have experienced that. I mean, when my son was, I think he was in like second grade, and he always had kind of, we called it his sing song voice, but he became harder to understand over one summer, and it was almost like he was like pausing in the middle of words. It wasn't a stutter yet per se that we associated it as a stutter, but we got him into speech therapy not because he stuttered, but there was like a, I don't know, the speech therapist got him in on like sort of what I would call like a technicality. It was like a different word or letter sound that he pronounced a little differently. And so when he started going to speech, that was when his stutter became much more pronounced. And so it always felt to me anyway that in us pushing that he should go to speech at school at like second or third grade, whatever it was, that it at the time it felt like we made him so focused on how to say the letters and say the words that it contributed to the stutter happening. I know enough now to know that it wasn't my fault. It wasn't the circumstances. It just was. But I definitely felt that for a while that, oh my gosh, did I do this to him?
Yeah. What a normal thing to feel, like everything, there's always a cause and effect, right? And when something happens, we tend to backtrack and think like, oh, what caused this, right? And so such a normal thing to go through and think about like, oh, did this cause his stuttering, Thank you for sharing that. That's very, very vulnerable.
Yeah, of course.
First. No, I'll go first. Um, I'll piggyback a little bit on that Heidi said. I think I look back and wish we didn't do as much speech therapy. So I think that's something kind of that Heidi said, like, did it just put, when we're, again, you say it comes from love and you just wanted to do the best,
Use easy onset.
and you think you're doing, you don't know what you don't know, so you just think you're doing the best. Well, the more we can do, the better. And sometimes I look back and think, what if we just kind of let them chill out and not get pulled out of class and not feel different and not. So again, I think that's a, a little, a
What
little,
if?
a
Yeah.
little what if, a little tinge of guilt and
Oh, and I just to add, when I was actually, I had forgotten about this, when I was in junior high, I had a small stint of stuttering on anything with the letter L. My name is Linda, so hello. And I remember saying like, look, and thinking, I know how to say it. I've said it before. What the hell was that? So I had the tiniest little glimpse of that, and I actually kind of forgot about it until Ethan started. And I thought, but you know, it's just like anything we give our kids. Like if you got it through my side of the family, you got my height too. I don't know. You got your tight hamstrings, but you got your good looks, honey. So, you know, you just can't beat yourself up about that kind of thing. And we've tried to forgive ourselves that we're trying to be good parents because not only did he have the speech therapist at school, we got an extra one because we're extra good parents. And we had them, they were contradicting each other. We're like, what the hell's going on? And then we found out that not all speech therapists are the same. And so we learned, and again, we're very appreciative for the NSA and all we've learned here and the support here. Um, so yeah.
Well, it's me. I'm gonna come in with a little curveball, different thing. at you. My daughter actually told me that she believes her stutter was due to trauma. So that hit me with a ton of bricks only because I was in an abusive situation she grew up in. So she was his way to get back at me. So the constant pressure and stress of that whole situation, she believes that's when her stutter got worse. Is she remembers traumatic incidences where she stuttered. So I think, you know, Linda hit the nail on the head is forgiveness. Because you can't always control, you know, how life happens. You know, not to mention old eggs and old sperm. I was 43. He was 53, so I just figured it was some defect in the mix. So, you know, that's too old to be having children. But yeah, you know, you got to let it go. It is what it is. Like I told her, I apologize. I said, I'm sorry, you know, that you feel that happen. I said, and I don't feel that I have to overcompensate for that because I let her take the lead on it. I said, okay, I own that. Okay, I can handle it as an adult. No child should have been put in that situation, but it happened. We can't go back and change it. So what do you want mommy to do going forward? How can I be a support to you on this journey? So I think forgiveness is a big piece, you know, and my guilt came only when I got involved with organizations because I did not do the SOP, the speech there. I didn't do anything. You know, she was 10. I was like, dude, what's up? You still stuck? You know, what you want mommy to do? You know, she's like, keep doing what you've been doing. You know, home is the only place where it's not a big deal. And I was like, you know, I'm a social worker. I really missed the mark on this. And then I found Chris and I found out I was supposed to be doing all this speech therapy and stuff. I wasn't doing none of that. I'm sorry. So that's my guilt came if I had started earlier, would she not have stuttered so much? But then I was like hearing, you know, it's here, there, hit or miss. It could have worked, it could not have worked. So that's my story.
Jamie, what a wonderfully self-aware child you have. For her to come up to you and be like, I love
Yeah,
that
old
trauma.
school. Her mama's 57 and her daddy's 67. She's an old soul.
Thank you for sharing that.
Can I say something? I just wish that we had known about NSA and the rest of the great, incredible resources that are available and that we know about today. I mean, when our son Dylan started stuttering, I mean, we were talking to the speech pathologist at school. We were talking to these experts, and they kind of had, not the greatest way to react to our son's stuttering. And so I think we followed the best advice that we had at the time. But over time, just getting connected with these communities has informed us how to be better parents. And I don't know, I share Heidi's resentment, or it's not guilt, it's just frustration that we didn't, that following the best path that we knew may have, at least temporarily, caused our son more frustration. I don't believe that it caused his stuttering to get worse, but yeah, I think that early on when we were dealing with it, we were probably emphasizing rules and all the other breathing and all that other crazy stuff that they had you do early on. And yeah, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. I think it really drives home the point of, you do the best you can with what you got. And to never look back, like taking a page out of Jamie's book, and it's like, all right, what can we do to keep going, to move forward? And yeah, you can look back and you can say, oh, I wish we knew about this earlier, or, I wish we'd done this and that, but you do now, and you can do your part, and you can give back, and you can talk to other parents and give them that information that you didn't have early on in your journey. So thank you for sharing that.
I also imagine, I could be projecting this, that maybe some of what makes it hard for parents who are listening to some of the stories are that, like, a lot of the adults involved in the NSA had like a rough relationship with their parents about stuttering, right? Their parents didn't do the, like, quote unquote best thing, but I can say, as someone whose mom did a really good job with, like, just, I did do speech therapy, but I don't feel like it was too much, and not all of it was good, and not all of it was, there were pros and cons. It was definitely a mixed bag. Some of it was good, some of it was bad. And my mom shared with me recently that there were times where she did try to have me practice these techniques, and figured out after a few, weeks of it or something, like, I don't like this. This, one, isn't doing anything, and two, like, I feel wrong. And I have no memory of her ever having me, like, practice techniques at home. I believe her, but I think the bigger lesson in my house was always, like, I just want you to keep talking. That's what matters to me the most. I don't care if you stutter or you not, like, that's number one priority. And knowing that I had that at home made, like, the biggest difference in the world. That, like, those things and those lessons that she had to learn on the way, those didn't mess me up. There may have been challenges or things, but, like, the main message that she was trying to send, which is, like, it's okay to talk however you talk here. I just want you to talk. That is what stayed with me the most. So I do hope that that can encourage parents that, like, as you're processing emotions on your own and seeing these things, that, like, it's normal to feel the weight and to wonder what we could have done differently or better or worse or all of this. But at the end of the day, that, like, message that you have for them, like, that's going to be received in some way, even if maybe they haven't found a way to live into that yet. That took me a long time to like be able to reflect back on, because I was so caught up in other things in my head, because I was a teenager, and then, like, a young person, and then a teenager. And it's not, you're not reflecting at that age. You're just like, what whatever, mom, you have to say that. You're my mom, like, whatever, And so I think I really do want to like encourage, parents that like all those feelings are totally normal. And I want you to be able to like think those things and share them, just to give some hope that like when your message is that you care and you're there, it does make a big positive impact in how they see themselves.
Well, I think we're going to be wrapping up soon. Does anybody have any final words they'd like to wrap up with?
You. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep.
It's Cheryl. I feel a little bit voyeuristic this evening. I am not a parent of someone who stutters. I am not a stutterer. I am the big, bad, scary speech language pathologist. But I am now part of this NSA family. My first conference was this summer. And I'm here because I want to learn from people's stories, right? The individuals that I work with as a speech language pathologist are more than that label. And they're more than that individual. It's the whole package and the whole story. I also work at a university, so I am now entrusted to help those future SLPs who are going to be out there. And my goal is to prevent them being part of the bad story journey, right, in someone's life who experiences stuttering. So I wanted to say thanks, basically, for sharing and letting me learn and see from a different lens what the experience of being a person who stutters and a loved one of someone who stutters is like. Much appreciated.
I'm also a speech language pathologist, but I wanted to send hi Jamie. I wanted to send an invitation out to our support group tomorrow night. Jamie Saunders and I host a Parents Connect virtual support group tomorrow night, and we see many of our friendly faces on the call tonight, and we would love to see more. So it's a big comfy couch where we just let all feelings flow. There's no judgment. And so we would love to invite you all to join us tomorrow night.
Can I just add one thing? Cheryl and all the speech pathologists, if you could just, we did finally find a speech therapist who told us about the NSA, but it was later, and I forget how old he was. So if you could just really tell the parents, even if you don't think you need it, you gotta go. And even if you think your kid doesn't need it, you gotta go, because just tell them all the stories you've heard about it transforming their lives and helping immensely. I wish we went to the NSA sooner. So my heart breaks when we meet an adult at NSA who's never met a fellow stutterer before. And we
Yes.
think, okay, well, at least our child was 13 at the first, or 12, around there. So, and then you get little one, people bring in a little 5-year-old, we're like, yay. So just, again, if you could just stress how the importance of, like, after we went to the first meeting, Ethan said, I found my people. And we were like, we just had no idea how important that was for him to hear somebody else like him. So
The connections matter.
so thank you for being here, and thank you for spreading the word.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nicole, for hosting tonight's session. This was really amazing, and I think very valuable to both parents, SLPs, and everybody that was here. So, thank you for bringing up a vulnerable topic that, maybe some of us didn't realize that we wanted and needed to talk about. So thank you, Nicole. And thank you all
Thank you.
for attending.
Yes, thank you all for being here and just these wonderful conversations and being open and vulnerable and really connecting the stuff that I talked about, because really all I did was plant a couple seeds, you know, or validate some things that you've already been feeling, like this already exists, and we're already feeling this. So thank you all for just having it come full circle and having these conversations. And I hope to see you guys again.
Thanks. Thanks, Nicole. Bye, 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 everyone.
Thank you.